In the video you're about to watch, I had something stuck in my teeth the whole time. Please don't comment on it. Happy Friday, welcome back to Drinking by My Shelf. My name is Emma and this is Balancing the Books. If you're new here, Balancing the Books is the game where I add up all of the books that came onto my TBR and all of the books that came off my TBR, and I try and make those numbers balanced. At the end of May, I had not succeeded in making those numbers balanced, and so what happens if I don't achieve that is I either have to give away books from my TBR, I have to unhaul them to balance it out, or I am allowed a little purgatory situation. Basically, for that, I have to take the book that has been on my TBR for the longest and I put it into purgatory. I have to read it within the next month. If I don't manage to read it, then it has to go. I have to unhaul it. So this was the book that went into purgatory at the end of May, A Lady and Her Husband by Amber Reeves, and I did read it! So my books for May are now officially balanced. So before I get on with June's Balancing the Books, I will quickly let you know what I thought of this, because this was a 5-star read for me, as basically every Persephone classic book I've ever read has been. They're just fantastic. This was so good, so much fun. It was about a woman who is this like gentle, sweet, middle-class married woman whose youngest daughter has just got engaged, and so she's like, what am I going to do with my life now? And so the kind of nice but condescending husband offers her a job at his company. He owns a chain of tea rooms, and he offers her a job, but in like quite a patronizing way, like she can go hang out with the waitresses and find out what they need, and he's thinking like maybe they want different aprons or something. And in fact, she gets really into it. Having thought that she couldn't do it, having had like no faith in herself, she's like, they're not being paid enough, they have nowhere to sit, and she becomes like full socialist and tries to start a revolution. It's not quite that extreme, but I just really liked it. I thought the main character in this book was such a good character. She was so believable. You really see the journey that she goes on with this slow realization that she can achieve more than anyone has ever let her think before, and that she is dissatisfied, and that the world is not the place that she thought it was, and that the men in her life are not the people that she thought they were. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. Oh my god. Read Persephone classics. I don't read classics that often, and I always think they're going to be difficult to read, but the Persephone ones are like without fail just amazing. Okay, so it is time to get on with this month's Balancing the Books, everything that I read in June. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor. So I am very excited to announce that I have officially partnered with Ana Luisa. I have talked about Ana Luisa jewellery so many times before in my videos. I am a huge fan of the brand, and I am now officially going to be working with them over the next year, which is really exciting. I love jewellery. I'm sure you've noticed. I love wearing jewellery, and the reason that Ana Luisa as a brand like so gelled with me and so appealed to me is because of their complete commitment to sustainability. It's really impressive. So they completely offset 100% of their carbon emissions. They tracked everything from their producing the jewellery to their shipping the jewellery to their office jobs, working in the office, everything. They tracked it all, and they have completely committed to offsetting that carbon, and since January 2020 they have been achieving that, which is incredible. And they're still trying to improve. They're still trying to produce less CO2 in the first place. Big thumbs up to any company that cares as much as I do about keeping our planet safe for a bit longer, please. I need somewhere to wear my jewellery. So to celebrate sustainability and the love we have for our planet Earth, I chose 3 pieces to show you today from Ana Luisa that are all inspired by nature. And if you like the look of anything that I'm wearing or want to browse the rest of their collection, they are currently hosting a summer sale, and everything across the site is currently 20% off. And Ana Luisa use really fair pricing in the first place. It's good quality jewellery that will last with you at fair prices. So 20% off is just fantastic. So let me show you what I'm wearing. So these gorgeous earrings here are the Hannah Sunset Hoops. These are currently £52 in the sale. They are so pretty. They look like a sunset. I'm completely obsessed with them. And then continuing on that sun theme, I also got a set of the Ilios sun hoops. So I put both of mine in the same ear. I have quite a lot of piercings in a row here, so I thought they looked super cute in a row like this. Obviously you can wear them however you want, and these are currently £40.80 in the sale. And then finally I chose this beautiful necklace set. This is the willow necklace set. I'm obsessed with willows. They're my favourite tree. I have a willow branch tattooed on me. It's obviously now a Taylor Swift song. Love a willow, and I think this is so gorgeous. It has such a lovely layered effect. So this one is currently £52 in the sale. So thank you so much to Ana Luisa for partnering with me in this video. I love them so much, and if you click the link in my description box below, you can go and browse their full collection and their incredible sale. Right, let's balance those books. So having finished my Purgatory book, that brought my TBR officially to 36 books. That's where it's been for a while. It's pretty good. We want to keep it that way. So the first thing I did was went out and bought a new book. This is Blackwater Sister by Zen Cho. I haven't read it yet, but it looks really great. Firstly, because it's so beautiful, like what a gorgeous cover. Also, I was just so taken by the description, and it's interesting because I don't usually read this kind of thing. It's a little bit of fantasy, it's a bit of magic and ghosts and goddesses. Not usually my thing, but I thought this one sounded so fun. Basically, this is about a girl who is heading back to Malaysia to reunite with that side of her family that she hasn't seen for a long time, and she starts hearing a voice in her head. And it turns out the voice is the ghost of her late grandmother. And her grandmother is super bossy and is on a mission to avenge her local goddess, and she is gonna make Jess be part of this mission whether she likes it or not. Also, I know that Jess is a lesbian. I don't know if there is a particular romance storyline in this book, but just love that representation. So yeah, had to add this one to the trolley. Then I hauled The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafon. This is the book that I have been, I think, the most, or one of the most highly recommended by followers. And you will find out why I was interested in that statistic in a video coming up soon. Spoilers. And I thought it was fine. I thought it was fine. I can see why people recommended this one to me, but it just didn't quite do anything for me. I thought I was gonna love it. At the beginning, the first like 100 pages or so, I was like, this is gonna go somewhere incredible. And then it just became very repetitive. Basically, it's about this kid. It starts when he's 10-ish, and we watch him over the next decade. And when he's a kid, he is given by his father a book, or rather his father takes him to this like hidden library, the Cemetery of Forgotten Books it's called, and says you can choose a book, any book from here, and then that book is going to be your responsibility. You have to care for it. And he chooses this book, he looks around, and then there's this one book that's like really calling to him, and so he takes it home and he completely falls in love with it. And I just loved that whole idea, but there's all this like mystery around who the author is. He's presumed dead. It's really hard to find any copies of his books. They never sold very well, even though they're so incredible, and they all seem to like mysteriously disappear, the copies that are out there. So it sounded really fun, and it then spans like 10 years of our main character Daniel exploring this mystery and trying to find out more about the author, and slowly it became less and less about the book. I liked the idea of it being about his connection to the book, and I also liked the idea of him having this responsibility for the book as a physical object, but it became a bit less about that and more just about like tracking down this mystery of who the author is, which was also fun, but it just started to be told in a very repetitive way, and it introduced like way too many characters, and I just started to get a little bit bored. So yeah, it was fine. I did think it was fine. I gave it a 3. Then I hauled and read Little Tales of Misogyny by Patricia Highsmith. And I didn't really like this one. I actually had quite a bad reading month, I think, in general. Yeah, I thought this one was, I gave it a 2. I, again, can see why this was recommended to me, and I think it almost worked for me, but I just didn't quite get them. It's a collection of short stories by Patricia Highsmith. I've read The Talented Mr. Ripley by Patricia Highsmith, and I really enjoyed it. But these stories, it was honestly very hard to work out. Were they tales about misogyny? Were they misogynistic tales? Did these tales hate women? Did they just hate people as a whole? I think they just hated people as a whole. They were dark, and I like dark, but not in a way that made me understand where they were going. I just felt like I finished each one being a bit like, okay. And I finished the whole collection and I gave it a 2 and I wouldn't pick it up again. Then I read a book that had previously been on my trolley, Can You See Me Now by Trisha Sakhlecha. That is a thriller about a woman working in the Indian government, as well as flashbacks into her past where there's something mysterious happened when she was friends with a group of rich girls at this elite school. And again, this one just didn't really work for me. It wasn't that it was bad, it was just that it relied on a thriller format that I no longer enjoy. And it's one that I used to really enjoy, so it's not a criticism of the format. It's just that I've read too many like that now and I no longer find them engaging. And that format is when, right from the beginning and over again, you are told, you the reader are told, that there is this secret, that something happened in the past, and the characters are all recovering from this thing in the past and everyone knows what it was except for you, and at some point in the book, towards the end, it will be revealed. And I think that used to really work for me in almost like a clickbaity way, like I just wanted to know. But now I've read enough of those formats to know that it's always a letdown for me. No matter how good the secret is, when you've just spent a whole book being told over and over again that there was a secret and that it's coming and that you don't know what it is, nothing is interesting enough when it gets revealed, to me personally, anymore. So yeah, I didn't really like that one, and I didn't really understand or like follow all of the characters and what they were thinking and what the effects on them were. So yeah, it wasn't for me, I lost interest. Then I read Pine by Francine Toon, and this one I loved and I didn't think I was going to at all. So this is a kind of gothic thriller, it's kind of horror, but nothing happens. It's just very slow moving and it's just creepy vibes. It's about a young girl who lives in Scotland with her father, and her mother went missing many years before. She doesn't really remember her mother at all. It's just like very ambiguous and it's very creepy, and you really start to feel unsettled and you don't feel like this little girl is safe. There are these supernatural sightings. There is this woman who keeps coming back and being seen by people around the village, but they instantly forget that they've seen her, so the only person who can remember seeing her is the little girl. Yeah, it was creepy and I just really liked the vibes. I really enjoyed reading it, and then right towards the end there's a little bit more of like an action sequence and there's some reveals which I thought worked really, really well. But even then, it's not, the reveals are kind of side plots. They're kind of like off-screen reveals. It worked so well. I loved this one, really, really did. Okay, then I hauled and read Strange Weather in Tokyo by Hiromi Kawakami. This is a strange little book. It's, again, not much happens, it's just vibes. It's just the relationship between a woman and her former teacher. So there is a big age gap between them, but when they meet, they are both like well into adulthood, so it's not creepy. I didn't think it came across creepy at all. And it's also just this like very slow burn of a relationship. They just run into each other at the local place where they both go to drink, and it just begins by these like philosophical conversations that they enjoy having with each other and discovering these like different perspectives on life. And then it's this kind of slow burn towards a different kind of relationship, a different kind of intimacy. I thought it was very sweet. I didn't fall in love with it. I wasn't super engaged as I was reading it, but at the same time I didn't want to put it down. I wasn't bored, I was just kind of gently being swept along in the conversations. When it got kind of too much about like the philosophical nature of their conversations, I was a little bit less interested in that, I think. So maybe that's why overall I didn't love this one, but I did like it quite a lot. Then I borrowed and DNF'd and returned The Seep by Hannah Porter. So this was a novella. It was only, so I borrowed the audiobook from Scribd. It was only like 3 hours, and the fact that I didn't even manage to finish 3 hours is like quite shameful. I think I listened to 2 hours of it and then I was like, I don't want to anymore. I was trying to step outside my genre comfort zone. It was a book that had been recommended to me, and it was described to me as speculative, but it was just very, very sci-fi. It was way too sci-fi for me. Things I did like about it is it was very, very queer, and it was an interesting premise. So it begins with an alien invasion of Earth. Our main character is a trans woman called Trina. something like that. And she is married to another woman, and then they're having a dinner party with another queer couple that they're friends with. And anyway, there's this alien invasion, but how it works is the aliens are formless, they don't have bodies, so it's just like an invasion of minds. They kind of half merge with humans, and humans just kind of embrace this. They like give themselves over to the Seep, and the Seep create this utopia. They break down capitalism and gender roles, and it's kind of amazing. And then we fast forward like years into the future when humanity has fully blended with the Seep, or is living this like blended existence, and Trina, or Trini, or whatever her main character's name was, her wife decides that she wants to be reborn as a baby. So that's something that people can do in this world, because she doesn't want to keep living. They all have immortal life now, and she doesn't want to keep living with all of the trauma and everything that she experienced before the Seep invasion. She wants to be reborn as a child and just experience this new world. And so she decides to do that and leaves her wife behind. And so it's about our main character like recovering from her grief of that. So it's a really interesting premise. And then she also meets this young boy who had been raised in a compound where they like rejected the Seep and were just living the old human life. But I got bored because it was just like way too sci-fi. I couldn't follow what was going on. I didn't care about hearing about all the technology over and over again. Then I hauled The Travelling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. I am scared to read this one. I think I'm going to cry loads. I actually got really teary just reading the blurb. That's why I bought this one, is because I was researching for a video I did for Book Break that was books for cat people, and I read the description of this one and I fully started crying and was like, instantly, I have to read this. So I ordered it to my local Waterstones like instantly. When I went to Waterstones to pick it up, I also bought The Baby Is Mine by Oyinkan Braithwaite, and I read it and I gave it a 2. Just like everything else seemingly this month. I thought it was fine. I loved Oyinkan Braithwaite's first book, My Sister the Serial Killer. I know that was a very, very divisive book. I absolutely loved it. So I had high hopes for this like tiny little novella. It sounded like it was going to be way more horror than it is. So it's about a man who, it's set during the COVID lockdown. It's about a man who is kicked out of his home where he lives with his girlfriend because he's been unfaithful. He's like a not particularly likable character that works really well. I did like reading his character. So he goes to stay with his aunt instead, and when he gets there, there's another strange woman in the house and there's a baby, and both his aunt and this other woman are claiming that the baby is theirs. And then it describes on the back that there's going to be all these weird horror things happening. A cockerel that stalks the garden, sand in the rice, a blood stain appears on the wall, markings on the baby's cheeks. But it wasn't horror at all, it was just a pretty strange family drama that all got resolved. It tells you the answer at the end, and the answer wasn't that interesting. I thought this was going to be supernatural, so I think I was just disappointed when it didn't live up to what I thought it was going to be. And I picked up another book in that same shopping trip, which was The Mothers by Bennett. I really liked The Vanishing Half by Bennett, and this was her first book, so I'm going to go back and read it. I'd actually heard about this one before, and it had always been on my radar. It's about a teenage girl who gets pregnant, and then it like goes a few years later and follows like what happens to the 3 main characters. It just sounded really good, and I thought The Vanishing Half was amazingly written, so I'm excited to read more from this author. Then I read The Floating Theatre. This is a book that I hauled last month as part of a surprise unboxing. So you can see a whole vlog where I opened up the box and then chose to read this one. And this was a surprisingly good read for me. It's historical fiction. It wasn't something that I would have picked up based on like the cover and the title and the description. And I actually found it very engaging. It's a story about the Underground Railroad, essentially, and I was nervous reading a book that is written by a white woman and is about a white woman. So it's about the Underground Railroad, but from the perspective of the white people, and I was like, you know, a little bit wary where this was going to go. So I definitely want to read some voices. I want to read some books about the Underground Railroad that aren't centering white people. But having said that, I did think this author did a good job because she didn't make it white saviory. So yeah, it is from the perspective of a white woman, and this woman does get involved with helping slaves, runaway slaves, escape, but she is not painted, I didn't think she was painted as this white savior she's pretty flawed. All of the white characters who are involved in helping are pretty flawed, and they all get into it kind of for their own selfish reasons, and it takes them a little while to fully learn. I don't think they ever do fully learn or understand the experiences there, and that felt, I could be wrong, that felt to me like a choice. It felt like the author was deliberately backing away from trying to make it all about these heroic white people who helped. And it's also, our main character works on a floating theatre on a boat, so that was a little fun little part of the story. Then I hauled and read A Burning by Megha Majumdar. I don't have this one physically because I hauled it on my e-reader, but I'm definitely going to buy a hard copy. I think I'll wait till it comes out in paperback, but I definitely would like to have it. Although I'm tempted by the hardback that has the really beautiful sprayed edges. It's a gorgeous book. I thought this book was brilliant. I read this one for my book club with my uni friends, and I think like it was kind of mixed. Some people liked it more than others. I was definitely in the team that loved it, but I found it incredibly upsetting and harrowing. It's a very, very easy readable book. Considering it's about like very tough subject matter, the book itself and the way it's written is very, very readable. I read it extremely quickly, which was great. And we have three main characters, three main perspectives. One of them is a young woman who is from a very, very poor family, and she ends up being accused of having been involved in this terrible terrorist attack. So right at the beginning we hear about this terrible attack on a train. It's apparently based on a real thing that happened, and just because of something that she posts on the internet, she gets accused of having had some involvement. So part of it's her story. We also hear the story of her former PE teacher as he gets involved with this right-wing political group. And then we also hear the perspective of a hijra called Lovely. So I didn't really know anything about this before, but in India and quite a few other countries, they have people called hijras, which is this officially recognized third gender. But it's not as progressive as it sounds, because it's from reading the book, and I'm not an expert on this at all. I've read the book and then I kind of read some articles about it. Hijras are like revered, but they are also oppressed and discriminated against. So they're kind of feared, they're kind of seen as magical. People will come and get hijras to like bless their children, but they're also begging and living on the street, and a lot of them are working as sex workers, and so you know they are not being treated as any other member of society. Anyway, we get to see how all these different stories intersect, and there are some really upsetting moments that are based on true things that have happened in India, which again I did not know about until in my book club. One of the girls lives in India, and so she was explaining that side of things to us. Yeah, like all of the characters, particularly the PE teacher who gets involved in this right-wing group, he's not a likable character. He's pretty awful, but he's a very human character, and you understand every decision that he makes. You don't hate him for it, you just think that maybe he's weak, and also sympathize that he comes from a different place in life. He has more to lose, he has more to gain, so it kind of makes sense, the choices that he makes. Yeah, I thought it was brilliant. Then I read Of Women and Salt by Gabriela Garcia. This was one that my patrons told me to read, so I read this one on my birthday. For my birthday from RG, I got some chairs, some sun loungers in our garden, so I lay on one of the chairs and I drank cocktails and I read this book, and I had a fantastic time. I really enjoyed this book. It's about 5 generations of Cuban women in this family, and then there's also 2 characters from a Salvadorian family that kind of intersect with them at some point. And we jump around in time a lot, but it's really about these just different women through the decades who are each so strong in very different ways, and some of them have these big secrets, and some of them we follow kind of more mundane storylines, and some of them we follow incredibly dramatic ones, and some of them have these big secrets. And it was just really, really about female strength and endurance. I thought it was fab. And then I hauled some more books. I hauled Rabbits by Terry Miles. This is apparently based on a podcast. I'd never heard of the podcast, but I might give it a listen now. It sounds really fun, sounds kind of The Matrix-y. So it's about this virtual reality game that is like taking place under all of our noses and we don't know about it. But you might notice it if you start noticing strange coincidences in your life. Maybe you see the same number showing up several times, or you see weird discrepancies, suddenly things change that you're sure were different yesterday. Then it might be time to start looking for clues, because that might be your entryway into this game. Play the game if you dare. It just sounds so intriguing. It might be completely not my thing at all. I feel like either I'll love it or I'll read 20 pages and DNF it. I hauled Competitive Grieving by Nora Zelevansky. I was sent this one. So the author actually reached out to me on Instagram to tell me about this book and then arranged for me to get a copy. It's a book about grief, so that could be intense. It's about a woman whose childhood friend dies really suddenly, and he was kind of famous, so our main character kind of feels like she has to compete in a way for like a slice of the grief that she's feeling, even though she had an actual relationship with him. But there's so many people kind of competing to own a bit of that memory. So that sounds very moving. And it's also a comedy. It's a dark, touching comedy and unlikely love story about loss and the chaotic aftermath of death. Fantastic. And then finally, I hauled Other People's Clothes by Calla Henkel. This is another one that I was sent to review by the publisher. So it's set in 2009 in Berlin. 2 art students arrive from New York, each with like very different backgrounds and problems, and they rent an apartment together from this eccentric crime writer called Beatrice Bex. And so they spend their nights going out, partying in Berlin, but strange things start happening and they start suspecting that they are being watched by Beatrice and that she's using them as inspiration for her next novel. So then they decide to try and beat her at her own game. But ultimately, they find themselves unable to control the narrative and it spirals into much darker territory. I mean, that sounds so up my alley, I can't even. And then finally, I unhauled a book. So you may have seen I've had on this trolley for a while now the book Shuggie, Bain by Douglas Stuart. I still do want to read it. I've heard like nothing but incredible things. But I didn't know when I was going to get round to reading it. And I had a friend who thought it looked really good and wanted to read it. So I thought there's literally no point it just sitting unread on my trolley. That's something that I'm already struggling with a lot of these books. Like, they're just sitting here. I'm not reading them. Someone should be loving them. So I thought, I'll just give it to him. He can just have it. He can take it. It can be his. At one point, when I'm ready to read it and I've reduced this pile a little bit more, I'll just buy it. Or maybe he will have finished it by then and I'll get it back from him. But for now, it is gone. It is not mine. I do not own it. So, with all of that done, my books are not balanced. I still have one too many books left on my TBR. Fuck. So I guess it's time to bring back Purgatory. The book that I have had on my TBR for the longest now is Hummingbird. That's this one here, Hummingbird by Tristan Hughes. I have owned this one since November 2018. So we're coming up on 3 years. I know that's not that bad. Like, 3 years is not the longest time anyone has ever owned a book without reading it, but I'm on a mission here, so just bear with me. It's set in the Canadian wilderness and it's about a lonely 15-year-old boy. I was recommended this one by a bookseller. I had a long chat at Mr. B's about my reading taste. He recommended me this. Why haven't I read it? I'm going to put this one officially into Purgatory. If I do not read this by the 31st of July, I have to give it away. Deal. Struck. So that was Balancing the Books. Check in next month to see if I actually managed to balance the books. I also will be posting my book trail updates in the next few days, so keep an eye out for that. And as I said at the beginning, do have a look at the link in my description box below to go and check out Ana Luisa and browse their amazing sales. You can have ears as pretty as mine and a neck as pretty as mine. Thank you so much to Ana Luisa for sponsoring this video and helping to fund this whole operation, this book buying habit, and I will see the rest of you guys very soon. Goodbye.
Ran into you at the drugstore, you were picking up your prescription. It's funny 'cause